Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the 24th episode of the Integrity Racing Show. We're going to call it the Jeff Gordon episode to all the Jeff Gordon fans that are viewers of the show. Welcome to the Thursday follow-up show after Charlotte, the first race of the second round of the chase, and it was an interesting race that caused a lot of jumbling in the chase standings. So let's go ahead and look at the results from this past Monday night. Andrew Fash gets another win because he needed one. An hour and 39 minutes, 167 laps. You see 6 cautions there, a couple cautions early in the race, and then the inevitable couple cautions late in the race that really kind of jumbled up the finish for 23 laps there. But rounding out the top 5, Nicholas Ward, a strong second place finish, somebody that just skated by in the first round of the chase and now looks at himself as being in a pretty good position with a second place finish there at Charlotte. Carlos Fonseca finishes third, a good run for Carlos. I know he was excited to get back on the right track and get himself a good finish. Yours truly grabs a 4th place finish, so a good finish for me. And then Guillermo Alvarez, another chase driver there in the top 10. Ty, you came back to the Integrity Racing League. This Ty McWhirter's our guest tonight. Ty, this was your gallant return to the Integrity Racing League, and you were up front for a large portion of the race. Tell us what you saw Monday night at Charlotte.
Well, I mean, we were having a fantastic run. Charlotte's not been good for me in integrity this year. You know, back in the spring, was running good, got caught up in a wreck, and then, I had a great car on Monday night, and we were fast and running up front, and just fortunately got caught up in the incident with about 10 to go.
There were a lot of good drivers and good race cars that got pretty tore up towards the end of that race. Let's recap the rest of the top 10. Joshua Campbell finishes 6th, Tyler Hearn 7th, Adam de Blasio 8th. Those are 2 chase drivers. Jay Heisman and Joseph Yates rounds out the top 10. So 4 2-to-green drivers, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then Adam de Blasio has done another piece of fine work to come up with this little fancy contraption we have here. This is your race recap from the chase perspective. And this is your 12 chase drivers. As you can see, 9 different leaders for 15 lead changes. We had some green flag runs there, over a 100-lap green flag run, I believe. Andrew Fash finishes first. Nick Ward, we talked about the top 10 there. And then on the right-hand side of the page, unfortunately, you got a lot of drivers that were up towards the front of the pack for a lot of the race. And then just didn't get the result that they needed. So those are the drivers that are in the chase and where they finished. Cody Smith's going to have some work to do after a 23rd place finish. And then Jacob Fife, we see your name down there with a 15th place finish. Talk us through your Charlotte race and kind of the mediocre result that you got away from it.
Yeah, I thought I was going to do well at Charlotte. I had some difficulties at the end, though, that proved to be a little bit difficult to overcome, and then I compounded my difficulties by making a mistake at the end of the race. I thought I got extremely tight with any long run scenarios. So before we had our long green flag run, I had stayed out to get some points, kind of do a little point racing, and that I thought was working all right. I kind of ended up where I expected. Played the strategy, missed the first couple wrecks, and then with the same caution that Ty had alluded to earlier, with about 10 to go, Nick Ward and Tyler Herr were battling for second, if I remember correctly, and I had worked the strategy I was up in 4th, and they didn't quite get together, but they had moved each other enough up the racetrack to where Tyler caught the wall, and I just had nowhere to go. Problem of it all is once I hit Tyler, went through the infield, went down through pit lane, spinning down through pit lane, and that gave me a black flag. Then the black flag that I got, even though I cleared it, which is within the rules, it still made me drop to the end anyway. So I was stuck behind some people who had damage and issues and stuff like that. So which you'll find about later in the admin time, I just in my rage of the moment, I neglected to follow my own rules. So, it's a tough night. I could have made the situation a lot better than it was, but I just didn't, I didn't capitalize on the opportunity I had. So we're going to have a uphill battle the next 2 rounds. It's not the position I want to be in because I'm going to have to race pretty hard at Talladega more than likely to kind of make myself safe. and we're just going to have to make the best of it.
All right, so let's talk about the right side of the page there. Those are chase drivers that maybe didn't have such a good run. James Hudson, Jacob Fife, we just alluded about Jacob's race there. Marcus Lambert suffers for a 16th place finish. Colton Landis, who was very fast and maybe a threat to win that race on Monday night, ends up finishing 18th. And we talked about Matt Bontempi and Cody Smith kind of struggling a little bit. So let's actually steal a few minutes and let's talk to our guest, Ty McWhirter. Ty, you've been away from the Integrity Racing League for a few weeks. Tell us a little bit about what you've been going through there and how excited you are to be back in the league and back into the run of things.
Well, I was having some serious computer issues. They especially came up around Indianapolis back in July. I was looking really good in points. Probably would have made the chase. Just that the computer has got to the point where the frames were just so bad, and it's too dangerous for me to be out there and affecting other people's race and points hunt. So, at that point, I realized I needed to take a break and then come back at the end of the season with a new computer. And here I am, and I'm still having a lot of fun, even though I'm not in the points hunt. But, it is what it is, and I'm just going to try to build on next year.
All right, and looking at your the picture that pops up, unfortunately, Ty doesn't have a webcam, but looking at the picture that pops up when you're speaking, it looks like maybe you and a family member in a race hauler. So it looks like you maybe do some racing in real life.
I do. I race a Legend on dirt at the Springfield Raceway in Springfield, Missouri. That picture is of my dad and I. We've been doing this since about 2012. My dad, he originally raced a modified, and then I got to the point where I was old enough to be able to race, and he sold his modified, and here we are. We're both racing a Legend together, having a lot of fun, and we've had an all right year, but it's all about having fun more than anything.
All right, let's talk about iRacing. Did you get into iRacing first before you got into real life racing, or did you get into iRacing and then just trying to transition? You said you've only been on racing in real life for about 4 or 5 years now. So which came first, the chicken or the egg?
Well, iRacing came first, actually, back in 2011. Just saw it on the internet somewhere. Can't tell you where, but and then I signed up, and I immediately just loved it. I was pretty bad at first, but I think I've been able to kind of build on it and gotten a little bit better at it.
You've actually been one of the faster drivers in the Integrity Racing League. You talked about that all year. It looks like you probably would have made the chase if it wasn't for those computer problems you had. So you've definitely been a front runner, even now that you're back in the league, even though you're not in the chase. Definitely somebody everybody's going to have to compete with. I always find it interesting, people that drive both in real life. Obviously, you said that you're driving in dirt as opposed to primarily asphalt, probably on iRacing. Well, there isn't a dirt on iRacing, so it's 100% asphalt. But anything that iRacing taught you that you were able to take over to that Legends car in real life, or vice versa?
iRacing is actually a great tool. It gives you good awareness of who's around you and, how to really handle race time situations. Physics wise, obviously not, I can't necessarily comment on that, but it gives you those good foundations and steps that, to be able to race around other people and set up your car and, just have respect for other drivers. I think that's one of the biggest things it can teach you.
All right, and now that you're back, have you set any goals for yourself in the Integrity Racing League? Maybe what's one of the tracks that you think you're better at that you can maybe steal a win from the chase guys and keep somebody from locking themselves in? What are some of the better tracks here as we close out the season?
I love Kansas. I love being able to run the High Line. Homestead's also a really fun track for me. But, we're just going to try to go for good finishes and wins and, come back next year strong, hopefully get that championship.
All right, well, we're going to talk about Kansas in a little bit. I'm like you. I really enjoy those tracks where you can run the High Line, so I'm looking forward to Kansas as well. We'll talk about that a little bit. Let's go ahead and update everyone on the caution count because it is something that everybody does need to remember, does apply during the chase. You can get suspended. So these have been updated after the Charlotte race, and hopefully you can see these. I'll try to zoom in a little bit so that everybody can see them a little bit better. James Hudson, a chase driver, picks up a caution at Charlotte, so he's going to have to watch that throughout the chase. Tyler Herr, another chase driver, picks up one as well. Michael Dole is under appeal, and I think Jacob might be about to talk about that in a little second. We'll talk about appeals and some other league admin stuff. Alan Roll in the Spam Toyota, I believe. I'm not certain of that. But Alan Roll in a Chevy, the Spam Chevrolet picks up his second caution. So I'm sure everybody doesn't want to see Alan get suspended. And then Adam de Blasio. So a lot of chase drivers having some trouble, causing some cautions on Monday night. That leaves them in a little bit of a danger area. Nobody wants to go into the rest of the chase thinking I have to try to avoid a caution. You want to be able to just try to do the best you can. And that kind of circles us right into the admin process. So interesting race, Jacob. We had a long green flag run to start, and then all hell kind of broke loose there late in the race. And I guess as an admin, that made you pretty busy.
Yeah, busy in a lot of different ways. So there's a few things to go over. A couple easy things, something a little bit more difficult, and I'll give some more explanation of that here in a minute. First, as I alluded to a little bit earlier, with all the things that happened during my wreck, I got put behind some people, and in my frustration, I had a lane change violation and tried to get around, Bontempi before the start-finish line. So if you look at the results, you'll note that that's their reduction of 4 points, which puts me a little lower down in the chase standings than you would probably think looking at the results. So I wanted to mention that, make sure we were straightforward with that. It's kind of funny when you're the one that writes the rules and then they completely go fly over your head once you get in a race. Second to that is, once again, you mentioned that Duel appealed his caution, which I forget the lap number off the top of my head. But usually we try to have the appeals taken care of for the show so we can announce them on the show. But quite frankly, it's been a very busy week. So I haven't had a chance to send it to the admins, much less have them respond back and give you a determination on how they ruled. Lastly, it was brought up at the end of the race that one of the drivers, it was thought that they had intentionally wrecked at the end of the race, and one of the other drivers got caught up with it. First, before I give a ruling on that, I want to explain the difference between a couple things, and this will give a clarity to why we ruled the way we did. Okay. So I want to give you the difference between what the definition per the rule book of intentional wrecking is, and then what the section 513, quote unquote, exiting the server, and it goes a little bit elaborate to that. So basically, what the situation was is the W00 at coming onto the white flag lap, basically drove himself down in the apron, drove up full throttle on the wall, flipped himself, and another driver got involved with that. So to be very specific, and I'm reading it directly off the rule book here, intentional wrecking is any member who is deemed to have wrecked another member on purpose in an IRL-sanctioned race of any kind will face an automatic suspension from the league for the remainder of the season. Any member who intentionally wrecks another driver during the playoff format, which we are currently in, will be suspended for the remainder of the season as well as the entirety of the following season. Okay, and then section 513, which is exiting the server, goes as follows. If a driver decides to exit the race server by Alt F4 for no apparent or known reason, needlessly destroying, damaging their own car, or otherwise potentially alters the outcome of another driver's race, said driver will be suspended for 5 races. If there is a repeat offense, this driver will be banned from the league. And then it goes on from there. But that's the meat of it. And this was sent because of some extenuating circumstances that'll be handled later. This was sent to the IRL Drivers Council, and they came back that this would have been filed under the Section 513 exiting the server. So in that case, the W00 of Bradley Haggard would be suspended for the next 5 races. But I wanted to explain the differences between intentional wrecking, because I can see where some people might see where it was intentionally wrecking, in this case themselves. But as the rules read, there is a difference between wrecking someone else and wrecking yourself, and therefore that's the resolution they came to with the 5-race suspension. So that's basically the deal for Charlotte. Most of the race went very well. I thought that there was definitely some room to race. There's a lot of side-by-side racing that went very well. I think once that caution comes out with about 50 or less to go, I think people get antsy. They get up on the wheel, they try too hard, or they're trying to get that extra spot, especially for the chase drivers, and that's where cautions start to kind of pile up. But otherwise, it was a decent race. So those are the admin deal for this week, and hopefully we can move on to Kansas next week and have some more clean racing.
Absolutely. So, Jacob, thank you for that update. Let's actually go ahead and look at the money issue right now in the Integrity Racing League, the chase grid. Andrew Fish locks himself into, I don't even know what the rounds are called anymore, the semifinal round, essentially, is what we'll call it. Excuse me, locks himself into the third round of the chase. This is going to mirror pretty closely, and actually I probably need to zoom out so that you can see the point totals on the right-hand side. This is going to mirror pretty closely with the results from Monday night's race, with a couple of bonus points that are added. So Nicholas Ward and myself and Guillermo Alvarez really did a solid job of putting ourselves in a decent position heading into Kansas. Tyler Herr, Adam de Blasio, Marcus Lambert, Colton Landis, a little bit on the edge there a little bit. And then people like Jacob Fife, James Hudson, Matt Bontempi, and Cody Smith on the outside looking in. Tyler, you're somebody that came back into the league. You're a respected driver, never really caused any problems in the league. But you come right in and everybody's all intense because of this chase format. How does it change the way you drive at all, or do you just say I can't really worry about that and just try to get things done, or how do you handle the situation that the league's in currently?
Well, yeah, I come back in kind of a weird spot, like you said. The biggest thing for me is I want to go out there and race hard, get top 10s, top 5s, and wins. But at the same time, I have to be kind of conscious of, what the chase is doing right now for every driver. And, that's kind of my main goal. I don't want to screw anybody up, and I just want to race everybody clean and fair. So, I'm kind of two-sided on this. Like I said, I want to go out there and get wins, but at the same time, I kind of had to be, a little cautious of how I race other chase drivers.
All right, and Jacob, you see yourself there, and your name's highlighted in red, and that can't feel good, especially with the wild card that we know is coming in 2 weeks, and that's obviously intensified both the Charlotte and Kansas race. It's kind of weird seeing how a totally different race that's 2 weeks away can totally change everybody's mindset over the race that we had on Monday and the race that's coming this Monday, because everyone's scared to death of what looms at Talladega.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Todd. I think I know more than one person I talked to prior to Charlotte had that in mind going into it. I think everybody wanted to work really hard at Charlotte to have that buffer, so you can have a decent finish at Kansas. With the way we have to run Kansas, that's its own wild card, honestly. With everybody up on the high side, one person runs into the wall, and it could be a 10-car pileup. So Charlotte was the race to get your points and to try to gain that buffer, and I just didn't get it done. So the guys that are with me along that cut line, Colton's just ahead of me, and then you have guys like Cody and Matt and James who are more than capable of being in the next round. So they're no slouches at this point. Everybody who's made it this far has made it for a reason. So I got hard work to do. I have to find a way to not only survive, but survive and run well for the next 2 weeks if I have any shot of making it at the next round.
And that's going to be tough. And I know that's for me, it was a really stressful race this Monday at Charlotte, just because what's looming. Hopefully the new surface model works at Kansas. That's the hope. But I think everybody, as Jacob kind of shakes his head no, I think everybody's been kind of hyped up this surface model 2 or 3 times, and it's never really made a difference. And especially at a track like Kansas that just continuously ends up being a one-car groove there at Kansas. So even though it's a good racetrack for somebody like me, and Ty mentioned earlier that he's a pretty good driver at the Kansas track, you just know anything can really happen when you're racing a one-groove racetrack. So really quickly, let's update a couple of things. We haven't had one of these Thursday night show in a few weeks, and we don't really talk about this in the live post-race shows. So let's update everyone on a couple of standings and updates on that. Adam de Blasio maintains a huge as Donald Trump would say, lead over the rookie point standings, 45 points over Brandon Burkhoff. Kent Weatherall there in third place. Good for him. Brad Wren was probably in second place before he had to kind of separate from the league a little bit. And Ty McWhirter there in sixth, despite missing a good portion of the season. But Adam DeBlasio really kind of running away from that. Speaking with Adam before the show began, it sounds like 17 points are available in every race. So Adam's still a few weeks away from clinching that, but it does look like it's firmly in grasp, barring disaster. And then the Elfton Golf and Batting Team Challenge. Lockdown Racing with their 11, count them, 11 wins so far this season. I think Fash probably has like 9 of those, but a good season for Lockdown Racing and for Andrew Fash as a whole. The real race has been for second place throughout the season. 2 Degree Motorsports currently holds that, but Integrity Racing Team with Jacob Fife has kind of been bouncing back and forth a little bit on that, and we'll see who kind of grabs that as we round down the season. That transitions us to Kansas, and we went to Kansas earlier in the spring, and Brian Terry grabbed the victory and locked himself into the chase. Unfortunately, Brian was unable to advance to the round of 12 after Dover 2 weeks ago. So Brian no longer with us there in the chase. But Kansas was an interesting race because we lost a lot of our front runners very early on. But we'll see what it has in store for us. You can see where some people wound up. Tyler Hurd grabbed second. I finished sixth. I was right behind Brian as we came to the last caution and decided if I was going to try to win the race, I needed to try to get tires, and that didn't end up working, so I ended up finishing sixth. Matt Bontempi finished 8th, Cody Smith 12th. De Blasio finished 13th. Andrew Fash was involved in an early wreck, and that placed him in 24th. Jacob Fife finished 30th. James Hudson 32nd. Colton Landis 37th. Nick Ward 42nd. So a really early night for Nick Ward. And then Guillermo and Marcus both missed that race. So looking back on Kansas, it's an interesting racetrack to say the least. I always and let's see if you guys agree. I always explain to people that Kansas is a fun as hell racetrack to drive. It's boring and awful to try to race on. So is that something that Jacob, that you would agree with?
Well, if I had better finishes, I might agree with you a little more. No, I actually did some practice a little bit earlier today. It's challenging to drive. I'll say that. Real quick before I forget and elaborate more, I do want to mention that Kansas is a day race, so please pay attention to that. Use the setups accordingly. But as we mentioned before, the surface model has done jack. You run up in the high line. You might be able to come down off that high line a little bit as we go through runs and stuff like that, but the low line, other than maybe the first lap, is of no use to you. So it's going to be challenging. It's going to be hard to pass as always. So you'll have to be creative. And when I say you'll, I mean me. Based on the results from that we just looked at, guys like Colton and Hudson and myself, we're on the right side of the page in the chase standings, and we're on the right side of the page at those results. So we're definitely have to pick it up. Otherwise, we're going to be in a world of hurt for Talladega. But, yeah, challenging track. I enjoy the challenge of it, but I don't exactly enjoy the racing of it in terms of trying to make your way up through a field and trying to make moves is very difficult and probably too difficult given how the track is supposed to run.
You know, I really enjoy hot lapping the racetrack. It's just once you get behind somebody that's just maybe a little bit slower than you, it's just so hard to get that run off of 2 or 4 and try to get around them. I actually do remember it's interesting that you mentioned that it's a day race. That actually does add a little bit more maneuverability and some tire wear, and people kind of slow down a little bit more. And I actually remember back when we were in this race last year, Busa was actually kind of cutting turn 2 down to the bottom. So we'll see if maybe that line comes back into play this year. He did that until he self-spun and wrecked it. But we'll see if that line comes back into play this year, and maybe the new surface model will help out later in the run. Ty, you mentioned you enjoy Kansas. Tell us what you enjoy about the racetrack and about the daytime and what you expect to see this coming Monday night.
Well, like I said, the thing I like about Kansas is running the high line. I love running the high line because it's just something you just don't get to see very often in iRacing. I think with the day race, I think you'll see a lot more variation with the different temperatures and all that. So I think that'll hopefully open up the racing just a little bit more. But I guess it'll be interesting in terms of who can pass who, and who can run up front, and how the chase guys can perform.
All right, so I believe that's going to wrap up our show. That's a wrap for episode 24 of the Integrity Racing Show. Thanks to our guest, Ty McWhirter, for A, coming back to the league. It's good to have him back. And B, joining us here on the Integrity Racing Show. Thanks to Jacob Fife, as always, for giving us the admin updates and joining us. Thank you for viewing, and we'll see you Monday night at Kansas for race 2 of the second round of the chase in the round of 12. Have a good night, everybody.